Then it all made sense to me. Realization struck me like a bolt of lightning, and I felt sick to stomach. Bile rose to my throat as I looked at the man I thought held a speckle of care for me and horror. That's it, isn't it? I uttered in a quiet voice. That was your plan this entire time. He looked at me in confusion. Emery, what are? You captured me from the beast so you can just hand me over to him yourself. You're not willing to risk your own people, that's why you stole me. So now your town can jump in joy as you have a total stranger to sacrifice. I trailed off as hurt filled my voice. That's why you're protecting me. That's why no one talks to me and why you act so sweet and innocent when you're realistically not. Let me guess, Luna means sacrifice to your town? Thane walked closer to me and cupped my checks, making me look up to him. Listen to me. No. Save it. I don't want to listen to you anymore. I said, drained of all emotions as I felt my heart drop to my stomach. I moved out of his hold and the sparking electricity passing between us. I turned away from him and moved towards his jeep that was parked right outside the alleyway. I felt him hot on my trail as soon as I moved one leg. Don't worry, I'm not running away. Would you give me a chance to explain? He asked. I turned to him with a poker face. I've heard enough from you, Thane, and I don't want to hear anything you have to say. There could be no explanation or any excuse for what you're doing. I climbed into the jeep before he had the chance of opening the door for me and pretend to be chivalrous. I knew he was too good to be true. I don't know why I cared so much about what he did. After all, he was the one who kidnapped me from day one. Yet I felt my walls crumbling around me as my heart squeezed in pain. This shouldn't hurt as much as it did right now, but if I was being honest with myself, I trusted him. I trusted every word he said, but after this, I mentally slapped myself for being so gullible. I thought there might have been a better explanation for why I was here. I was hoping for one, but now my hope faded into oblivion. I tried to will my tears away and keep up my strong facade, but it was of no use. I was going to die anyways. The brick wall I had built around me since I got here finally started to crack. As Thane entered the vehicle and shut the door, I felt the first drop of tears stream down my cheek, betraying me. I quickly wiped the droplet away, but it was to no avail as more started pouring in a silent cry. I turned my face away from his view as he keyed the ignition, and I looked out the window, but my sniffles gave me away. I didn't want him to see me break down, but I couldn't help it. Before he drove off, he turned my face to his view with a shattered look on his own face. He wiped the tears away as he looked at me helplessly. It's not what you think, he whispered. Isn't it? I grumbled. You act all kind and protective, but you're nothing but a callous, selfish asshole. Language, he chastised. I'm going to curse if I want to, okay? I said, moving my face away from his hold. He pulled out of the parking lot and began to drive back to his house, otherwise known as my hostel. We forgot Bailey, I said, remembering the bubbly blonde hair girl. Lucas will get her, he assured me. He remained silent for a moment until he got all serious. Emery, I don't want to be the one to bring tears to your eyes. I want to be the one to put a smile on your face. I looked over at him to see him shifting his gaze from the road to me, waiting for my reaction. I put back on a poker face to not let him have the satisfaction of knowing that I cared. How could I let him have that victory after what he is going to do to me? That's the cheesiest line I've ever heard, I said in a monotone. Why'd you run? He suddenly asked. Isn't it obvious enough? I asked, and he gave me a confused look. You brought me here against my will, Thane, and I now find out that you plan of sacrificing me, I said as my voice broke. He ignored what I said and carried on. Was I that bad to you that you felt like running away without being able to talk to me? You would have stopped me, I simply stated. Damn right I would have. He growled. So was all what happened today you just playing me, just a joke, just you trying to get away from me? You weren't actually that gullible, were you? I lied. I didn't play him. I was jealous of Abigail. I was hurt by what he said to me, and I actually felt my heart flutter when he said I was the one who stole his heart. I was, because what I told you was the truth. You're the one for me, Emery. His voice was filled with hurt. I sneaked a look at him and he was tense and his knuckles were white from holding the steering wheel so tightly. If I really stole your heart, then why are you doing this me? Is this your way of punishing me because I unknowingly captured your attention? I questioned and he remained dead silent. I guess I'm right once again. You're doing this because you like Abigail, aren't you? And you think I may jeopardize your little bed buddy? Abigail doesn't have anything to do with this. Oh, spare me. I saw the way she looked at you. Fine. If that's what you want to believe, then I wouldn't stop you. Wouldn't you ever just listen to what I have to say? He asked, frustrated. Why? So you can just lie through your teeth and mess with my head, I stated. He went dead silent after that, and for the rest of the journey the air was thick with tension, and I felt emptiness inside me. An emptiness that was brought upon by my inevitable fast approaching death. When we arrived back to his house, there was a new car parked right outside. Thane spotted the car and sighed loudly. Just the perfect timing, he said sarcastically. I jumped out of the Jeep as soon as he stopped and before he could cut the engine off. To express my growing hate for my hijacker, I slammed the door on his precious Jeep for added effect. Maybe if he cared an inch for me what he does for his vehicle, I might have a chance to live. But unfortunately for me he doesn't, and he isn't anything but a cold-hearted imbecile. I bounded inside quickly to avoid Thane for as long as possible. Emery, wait. He called out to me. Blinded by cascading tears from my eyes, I hurtled into someone. Sorry. I managed to get out as I wiped my eyes clear. The woman looked strikingly familiar, especially her brown eyes, but I can't say that I've ever seen her before. Together with her there was a girl around 16 years and two twin boys who looked around 8. Hi, you must be Emery. The girl chirped at me and pulled me into a hug. I'm Tate, Thane's sister. I was a bit taken aback from meeting her, but before I could say anything, the little boys greeted me, and were Thane's brother. One smiled up at me and I could see all their resemblance to Thane. My name is Thomas. And I'm Teddy. The other one smiled up at me. They all looked at me with worried expressions at my tear-stained cheeks as I tried to wipe any tears away. The older woman looked at me curiously before she said, "Why don't you all give Emery here a minute?" But Tate was about to fight her, but the woman held up her hand. "Take the boys to the kitchen, would you, Tate?" Tate gave me small smile before she and Thane's two brothers all walked off. The woman walked over to me. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked in a motherly tone as she placed both her hands on my arms in a comforting hold. I shook my head no, unable to speak before my voice broke and my tears started again. I heard the door behind me shut close as it rattled my bones, signaling I was once again locked away. "What did you do?" the woman asked in an accusing voice which held me confused, but when I looked at her she was looking behind me as she aimed her question. "Mom, now is not the time," he softly answered. So this is who she was and why she looked so familiar. It was because she is Thane's mother. I stepped away from her hold and looked at her in horror and disgust. I shifted my gaze from mother to son in disdain. How could they even look me in the eye after what they're planning to do? "Do you know what your son is doing?" I spitted out at her. "Of course you do," I accused before she could answer. "With all due respect, Mrs. Blackwood, I despise you people. How could you condone such a thing? You and your entire little town are just holding me here to sacrifice me. How could you allow your son to kidnap me and hold me here against my will while you all plan my sacrifice?" I raised my voice at her. She gave me a confused look before turning her gaze to Thane and glaring daggers at him while he looked at her guiltily. "Sweetie, whatever Thane told you, you must have gotten it confused," she gently said, looking at me with pity. "Your precious son didn't tell me anything. He forced me here and wouldn't even give me answers. This is why you have the story wrong," she continued hastily. "There isn't anything you can tell me that would be a reasonable excuse for why I'm here. As for your son, please tell him to leave me alone." I ended my rage with hurtful words as I stormed upstairs. Thane's mother's eyes held such hurt that I knew I hit home and instantly regretted what I said to her. But that's the thing about words, once said they can never be taken away. I went straight into his bedroom and locked myself inside as I had nowhere else to go. Somehow over the past few days I had become acquainted with this room as it brought me a strong sense of security. I opened the balcony doors in much need of a breath of fresh air and some quiet solidarity. I sat down on one of the cushioned seats as I breathed in the air as it cleared my stuffy nose from crying so much. My tears were long gone, but the heartache was still there. I couldn't get it wrapped around my mind that Thane betrayed me. Wanting to rid myself of all things Thane and sacrifice related, I looked over the balcony down to the most magnificent garden I have ever seen. There were various flower beds holding vibrant buds of tulips, roses, sunflowers, and dozens more. Wildflowers grew around the perimeter of the huge backyard which led to the forest. There was also a lovely pond and a few benches scattered around the beautiful surrounding. A few children were playing among the flowers, and I couldn't help the smile that spread across my face at the sight. I always had a soft spot for kids and loved the company of the little bundles of energy. I used to babysit a lot back in my old town to make a little extra cash, but honestly I loved the kids. I don't know for how long I just sat there, looking at the kids play, but before I knew it, the sun was setting as I gazed at the beautiful scenery as it lowered behind a distant mountain. Sooner than I wanted there was a persistent knocking on the door, and there was only one person I could think of. Thane. Emery, open the door, he said from the other side. I ignored him and went inside the bedroom as the kids left the garden and went inside. Thane kept knocking and calling. Please Emery, open the door, he begged. I wouldn't stop until you do, he insisted. Emery. Emery. Open the damn door. I rolled my eyes at his fake interest in what I'm doing as I closed the doors to the patio. At least say something so I know you're all right, he said. If you don't, I swear I will break down the door. Not wanting to see his face just yet, I decided to answer his stubbornness. I'm fine, you can drop your act now. I heard him sigh in relief. Thank God, he said. Deciding a good relaxing bath should remove my pent-up anger and stress, I stepped into the bathroom. No matter how long I stood under the shower, it wasn't long enough. I quickly changed and exited the bathroom. I paced the length of the bedroom not knowing if I should exit or not, but I was starving. Deciding food was better than an empty stomach, I took a deep breath and exited the bedroom once I knew all my emotions were gone and I wouldn't break down again. I just had to get the tears out earlier for all my pent-up sadness I have kept since the ritual. What shocked me was Thane sitting on the floor right across from the door. As soon as he heard the door open, he looked up at me. He stood up and looked at me as different emotions flashed through his eyes: relief, anger, and guilt. I walked past him into the kitchen as I looked around for something to eat, but everything he had was to be cooked and I definitely had no clue on how to do that. What would you like to eat? Thane asked, walking behind me. I shrugged and I went to sit at the counter as he moved around the kitchen whipping up something. How could you say something like that to my mother? He calmly asked, but I knew he was angry. After what you're doing to me, I didn't think I was in the wrong, I replied with a shrug as guilt was eating at me. After putting some pasta to boil, he turned to me with an irritated look on his face. I don't want to fight with you, Emery. I'm sick and tired of it. Ever since you've gotten here we have done nothing but fight. I avoided his gaze as I knew he was right, but was I in the wrong for acting like I did? He went on after my silence. With that being said, I just want you to know that I'm like this because of myself and not my mother. She is the best parent anyone could have and I'm solely to blame for my behavior. Is she still here? I asked. No, my parents left a while ago. I shook my head, not knowing what else to say. Emery? Thane asked, and when I looked up at him he was right in front of me on the other side of the kitchen counter. Can I explain myself to you? Would you give me 10 minutes of your time to just clear the air and explain that you were too fast on concluding why you're here? He gently asked. No, I began, but he cut me off. Please, Emery. You don't ever listen to me, never. He said, agitated. Just give me a few minutes. I promise you that I would leave you to believe what you want after, but you have to at least hear me out first. I hesitated before I nodded at him to go on. If I was going to die, I guess I needed some sort of explanation in closing so I could rest in peace, or pieces after the beast is done with me. He looked appeased at my answer and went on to finish our dinner. By the time he was done, I had a scrumptious plate of pasta and chicken set before me. We'll talk after, I'm sure you eat, he said, taking a seat next to me. I discreetly shifted to the end of my seat farthest away from him, but Thane, being Thane, noticed. He placed his hand around my waist and shifted me and my stool impossibly close to him. Now eat, he commanded as he whispered into my ear. I glowered at him before grabbing a fork full of pasta as Thane laughed in amusement. I was in heaven. It was the best pasta I had ever tasted and I quickly devoured it. Thane must be enjoying it as well because he ate a lot, like enough to feed a family of 5. I gaped at him after his last round of food and he sent me a sheepish smile. After cleaning up, Thane led me to the living room where he pulled me down on the long couch right next to him. So what do you want to tell me, that I'm right? I asked. He scowled at me. If you would give me a chance to get a word in, you would know. I rolled my eyes. Go on. I tucked my feet beneath me as I got comfy. You're wrong, he simply stated. About which part exactly? I asked when he didn't say anything else. Everything. He sighed as I egged him to continue. I didn't bring you here for a sacrifice, and I definitely didn't bring you here to kill you. You're kidding, I stated. I never kid, he answered seriously. I was baffled. Okay, so let's say I actually was to believe a word you say. I still don't know why I'm here, so why did you bring me here? To marry me, he stated. I laughed in his face at his terrible joke. Yeah, right, Thane. I don't believe you for a second, and you say you never kid. I'm not joking, Emery, he said in a serious tone which wiped the smile straight off my face. Yes, you are. No, I'm not, he said, looking me straight in my eyes and daring me to defy him. Then where's the ring? I asked nonchalantly. He visibly froze and I smirked because I knew that's one thing he couldn't just have lying around. But when he got up from next to me, it was my turn to be frozen. Walking straight into his bedroom, he disappeared for less than a few minutes with a box in hand. A very tiny, scary-looking jewel box, and I felt anxious in the worst way possible. He plopped back down right next to me as he pulled out a beautiful ring. It was a sort of rusty silver-colored band that was etched with a tree bark pattern that was unlike anything I have ever seen, and placed in the center was a gem. The gem was a dark silver-colored diamond that looked pricey. Whose ring is it? I asked timidly. It belonged to my grandmother, who specifically gave it to me to give you, so technically it's yours. He smiled. I can't accept this, Thane. I tried pushing his hands away, but he quickly grabbed my hand. Thane, what are you doing? He smiled at me as he placed the ring on my right hand ring finger instead of my left. Don't worry, I'm not proposing, yet. It's a promise ring. Your wedding ring will be saved for your left hand, but I want you to know that I plan on marrying you, he said, kissing my hand. I'm not marrying you, I said in shock. You will. You can't force me into matrimony. I wouldn't force you, Emery, but when the time is right, I will ask, and you will say yes. What if I don't? I wouldn't give up until you do. He shrugged. However, I'm 99.9% sure you're going to say yes. Really? Why is there a 0.1% chance of me saying no? I asked with raised eyebrows at his cockiness. Well, there's a 0.1% chance of you not liking me, which isn't going to happen. Keep dreaming, buddy. I rolled my eyes. I can protect you, Emery, if you let me. I can protect you from almost everything that can happen to you in the outside world, he said as he took both my hands in his and placed them on his lap. I didn't know how to feel about this guy. Yes, I practically set my mind to hate him earlier, but we had this invisible yet powerful connection that I just couldn't shake. I was slowing believing that he didn't want to kill me, but then I felt bipolar for changing my mind so fast. First I hate his guts, now my mind is screaming at me to believe him and give him a shot for no feasible reason. Was it really realistic to actually even think about liking him? Well, if it isn't my very own superhero. I faked swoon. The Superman to your Lois Lane. I like Spider-Man better. I shrugged. I'm sticking with Superman, sweetheart. Sweetheart? Sounds cute. He smirked at my disgust. So why did you bring me here to marry you anyways? I decided to change the subject. He paled at my question. Before I can explain that to you, I need to show you something so you can fully understand. I was confused by his cryptic explanation. What do you have to show me? Who I am, he said, avoiding my questioning gaze. And who are you? I asked. Don't tell me, your name isn't Thane Blackwood. I guessed. No, I'm Thane, alright. He said, letting out a little laugh. I'm just worried about what you don't know. Unless you're a psycho serial killer that likes to marry his victims before he kills them, then I don't think I have anything to worry about. I gave him a pointed look. So come on, tell me who you really are. You will hate me. Now how are you so sure? Because I know you enough to know that you will. He looked at me sorrowfully. You clearly don't know me enough. Plus I would never hate you. I may strongly dislike you right now, but I don't think I can hate you, yet. I said cautiously. He chuckled at what I said. Glad to know. I didn't think you can hate me anyways. He said, bumping his shoulder with mine. So you gonna answer my question or? I trailed off. Not yet. But before I could complain, he continued, tomorrow I promise I will. I want to be outside when I show you, but you have to promise you wouldn't hate me, he said, making me swear I wouldn't. I didn't get what the big deal was. I wouldn't hate him for who he is without knowing his story. That would just make me judgmental. So I promised him, I promise. I said sincerely, finally hoping that tomorrow all my questions will finally be met with some answers. One question though. I asked, and he reluctantly nodded. What's a Luna? He grinned at my question. A Luna is the motherly figure of the pack, my wife and my equal who helps me run my hectic pack, also known as you. I felt nervousness growing inside me. Run your pack? Aren't they your family? Yes, some biologically and most non-biologically, but we have all been together for centuries. Ever so often a new family will join us and they live with us and secure a place for the next generation to come. They are protected in our lands and we all need a leader. My family has and will always be the leader. As the firstborn heir of my family, I automatically receive the leader position, and you being my future wife, you're my Luna. What makes your family the leaders? I asked, trying to juice as much information as possible. Well, for starters, my family is the strongest in the pack and has said to be the wisest. The second in command and third in command are of different families, usually the second strongest family. In this case it's Lucas, my best friend, and the third in command is the best fighter and trainer, who is Bo. Of course, if anyone wants a chance to become the leading family, they will have to defeat the leader, me. But that isn't going to happen. Very cocky. I noted. How would one have to defeat you? He chuckled. No, I am the strongest person here. Not trying to defeat me, are you? He asked, which made me blush. To defeat me they will have to fight me, till death. He said, shrugging like it was no big deal. Death? I asked, shocked. What kind of barbaric traditions do you all have? It's what we grew up learning and following. But don't worry, sweet pea, no one will dare challenge me. Someone should, just to wipe that proud smirk off his face. So, what does a Luna do exactly? I asked curiously. Why don't I show you tomorrow? He offered. After or before you show me who you are? I asked skeptically. I wasn't sure if he was tricking me by saying tomorrow he will explain when he could just be putting it off. After I explain and show you who I am, once you don't kill me, that is, I will explain. I smiled at him. You know you're dead set on me hating you. What if I actually do? Then I'll kiss you until you forget your name. He winked. Real smooth lover boy. I said playfully, shoving him. You should probably get some sleep. Thane said, looking at the clock on the wall. I looked at the time, and it was barely past 8 o'clock. What? No way, let's talk. We have never had such a civil conversation. It's almost refreshing. Thane's eyes sparked with interest as he asked, okay, then why don't you tell me about the beautiful Emery Aiken? Emery was the most stubborn person I have ever met. I couldn't believe she attempted to run away, not to mention she came up with the delusional thought that I was going to sacrifice her. She definitely brought out my anger and my love for her. I didn't tell her that she was wrong because if I did she would have insisted for the truth, which I wasn't ready to tell her, not yet. But I knew if I didn't tell her soon I would lose her, and I couldn't even bear the thought of such a thing. When we pulled up to the pack house I knew I was going to be in some serious trouble. My parents' car was parked outside, and if they only knew I haven't told her about me they would definitely disapprove. I couldn't stop Emery though because she jumped out of the Jeep before I even had a chance to park. Emery, wait. I called out to her. When I entered the house I wasn't surprised to see Emery in my mother's arm as my siblings all walked away. It broke me to see her crying, but I couldn't tell her the truth or else she would hate me. Are you all right, dear? My mother asked her as she placed both her hands on Emery's arms in a comforting hold. What did you do? My mother asked in an accusing voice toward me. I looked at her guiltily. Mom, now is not the time. I softly answered. Emery stepped away from her hold and looked at her in horror and disgust. I knew what she was going to say, and it was all because of what I had her believing. Do you know what your son is doing? She asked. Of course you do. With all due respect, Mrs. Blackwood, I despise you people. How could you condone such a thing? You and your entire little town are just holding me here to sacrifice me. How could you allow your son to kidnap me and hold me here against my will while you all plan my sacrifice? My mother gave Emery a confused look before turning her gaze to me and glaring daggers while I looked at her guiltily. My anger increased towards Emery, but how could I be angry when it's my fault she didn't know any better? Sweetie, whatever Thane told you, you must have gotten it confused. She gently said, looking at Emery. Your precious son didn't tell me anything. He forced me here and wouldn't even give me answers. And there she goes again with me being her kidnapper. This is why you have the story wrong. She continued hastily. There isn't anything you can tell me that would be a reasonable excuse for why I'm here. As for your son, please tell him to leave me alone. Emery finished her wrath and stormed upstairs. My mother's eyes held such hurt, and I knew Emery instantly regretted what she said to her. It hurt me to see my mate insult my mother to her face, but if I had just told her the truth, giving Emery some needed space to cool off, I turned to my mom. Mom, I began, but she cut me off. You haven't told her yet. What are you waiting for, Thane? Haven't I raised you better than this? She shouted at me. That's my mom for you. Mom, I'm handling it. I simply said. You better be. I can't believe you have the poor girl believing that you plan on killing her. If your father had done that to me, I would have rejected him from day one. Reality finally caught up to me and I knew she was right. You're right, Mom, I'm sorry. I should have came to you months before to help train me on winning over my girl. I said sheepishly, rubbing the back of my neck. You sure should have. She said, smiling as she wrapped her arm around mine and led me to the kitchen. I stopped her before we entered and said, about what Emery said to you, she didn't mean it. If anything, it's my entire fault. I'm sorry. It's all right, sweetie. I know that she didn't mean any of it, and I understand how confused she is right now. After all, I was in her position 20 years ago, and I was regretfully a bit ruder to your grandma. She offered a gentle smile. Thank you, I said, grateful for my mother's kind heart. As we entered the kitchen, my father, Carson, was stuffing his face with cherry pie, something I learnt that Emery loves. My sister and brothers were all out in the backyard. Oh, Carson, don't I feed you enough at home? My mom smiled. My father gave my mom a toothy grin before unwillingly leaving his pie. Sorry dear. He moved over to her and gave her a hug. That was what I admired the most about my parents. They were still head over heels in love after 20 years, even though mates are usually like that, but my parents were different. I wanted that for Emery and myself. Honey, you must hear what Thane has done, or not done in this case, she told my father. Thanks for selling me out, Mom, I grumbled. Let me guess, he hasn't told her yet. My dad was spot on as he laughed at my deflated expression. Precisely, tell him that he needs to explain everything to her as soon as possible and not have her thinking he is going to kill her. My mom explained. Oh, let the boy do it as he please, he will have to face that consequences after. He shrugged and I smiled until he said, but what is it about her thinking you're going to kill her? Before I could get a word in, my mom cut me off. He told her that he brought her here to sacrifice her to the beast. What? That's the stupidest thing I've heard. My dad glared at me. Thane, you need to tell her in order for tradition to go on next 20 years. I know, I just need to make sure she doesn't reject me. Also, I never told her that. I just didn't correct her. Oh, Anne, what are we going to do with him? My father asked my mother. That's for him to deal with, just once he doesn't hurt her feeling, she said, walking outside. My father watched her leave until he motioned me to my office. When we entered, he began on my case. Son, if it's one thing I learn about mates is that you tell them the truth as quickly as possible. Even though it may be scary, in our case, you have to tell her. The sooner she knows, the better it will be for the both of you. She may think she hates you, but she actually doesn't. Deep down she has probably started falling for you already. I sat down, tired of just thinking about approaching her with what I had to tell her. How do I start? My dad patted my shoulder as he sat next to me and told me it was up to me to decide. After that we discussed a few of the pack businesses and basic training skills, as well as the recent attack from the Rouges. My family left soon enough, leaving me to deal with Emery. I walked up the stairs slowly, dreading to face her wrath. I knocked on my room knowing she was in there. No answer, so I kept on knocking. What if something was wrong with her? Emery, open the door, I yelled. Please, Emery, open the door, I begged when she didn't answer. I wouldn't stop until you do, I insisted. Emery, open the damn door. I heard the doors to the patio closed, so it brought me some relief. At least say something so I know you're alright. If you don't, I swear I will break down the door, I called, still worried. I'm fine, you can drop your act now, she finally answered me. I sighed in relief, thank God. Even though she insulted my interest in her, I was grateful. She at least answered me. I heard the shower start, so not wanting to leave her alone, I sat across from the door hoping for her to come outside when she finishes. As soon as I heard the door open a while after, I looked up at her. I followed her to the kitchen and made pasta for both of us. Even though she was guilty about what she said to my mother, I still questioned her about her actions. She was justified in her explanation, but I just had to ask her. I explained to her that I don't want to fight with her anymore, because that has been the only thing we have been doing since I brought her here. That was step 1 of my plan to telling her. After dinner I implemented step 2 of getting to know her a little better, which had me intrigued. I of course promised to tell her my secret the following day, which had me anxious, but her sweet laughter comforted me. I wanted to talk to her all night, but when I saw her eyes closing on her, I knew I should let her sleep. I just prayed tomorrow goes smoothly, and she doesn't reject me. It's time for her to get answers. I awoke from the morning sun, shining through the large windows of Thane's bedroom. I looked at the floor, fully expecting Thane to be asleep, but to my surprise he was nowhere in sight. I smiled, remembering last night, the first night we actually got to know each other and shockingly didn't argue. Well, there was a mild banter surrounding our superhero preference. Last night. So why do you like Spider-Man so much? Thane asked after he fought me over how much Superman is the greatest hero to exist. Well, he doesn't really have any weakness to stop him. I simply stated with a shrug. Thane looked at me expectantly but with authentic curiosity. Spider-Man's only weakness is his identity. He has no kryptonite to weaken him. When I was finished, Thane looked at me with awe and admiration as if he didn't care about what I was talking about but cared for me, just rambling on with so much passion about something I liked. He continued staring at me and I was self-consciously squirming about. Do I have something on my face? I deadpanned. That snapped him out of his daydream as he cleared his throat. Ugh, no, it's nothing. Tell me, why'd you choose to become a doctor? He changed the topic. His question made me silent as it brought back the bad memories of my sister's struggles and that being the reason I chose the medical field. I don't want to talk about it, I mumbled. Thane took my hand in his and rubbed soothing circles with his thumb as he said, It's okay, you don't have to talk about it. But just know that I'm here and ready to listen to you whenever you're ready. He gently said, and I was relieved he didn't pressure me. Thank you, I said, squeezing his hand in mine as I gave him a thankful smile. Okay, enough sadness. What do you do anyways? I asked curiously. He laughed at my sudden shift in mood. Well, I take care of the pack. I handle a few businesses around town and in different states, which is in my family name. I do a lot of paperwork and I train the pack. He concluded as if he doesn't do anything at all. I was confused about one thing. What do you mean, train the pack? He ambivalently answered me. Well, we train by learning how to fight in battle, and we build our muscles and test our speed as we learn how to use our strength and agility to our fullest potential. He looked at me wearily. Please don't tell me you're a part of some mafia group. I steadily shifted away as I carefully watched him answer my question. He playfully smirked at me as he suddenly grabbed my waist and pulled me extremely close to him. So much for moving away. What if I said I was? He whispered in my ear. I felt intimidated by his closeness as I tried to answer him 99.9%. Honestly, the 0.1% being what I actually said. I would probably like you a whole lot more. I chuckled at his bemused expression as I continued, but then I would just be lying to your face. I shrugged. You little. He began as he started tickling me. Stop, I said in between laughter, trying to get his hands off me. Say you're sorry. He continued tickling the life out of me. Knee, hiccup, ver. Even though I was glaring daggers at him, he continued on with his torture until I finally but reluctantly gave in. Fine, hiccup, I'm sorry. He grinned at me. Sorry, what did you say? I didn't catch that. I stuck my tongue out at him like a little kid but nearly choked as I hiccuped once again. He suddenly got up from right next to me and went to the kitchen with an amused smile on his face. He returned with a glass of water but I shook my head no because I was immune to that trick. Water never seemed to keep my diaphragm from moving with the sudden hiccups. It doesn't work, I said. Hiccup. It will, he said, bringing the glass to my lips as he pinched my nose together to cut off my breathing. Are you insane? I said, pulling away. Just trust me. He said, how could I? Should I? What if I die? Those were the thoughts that were running through my brain as he gently grabbed my chin before moving back to pinch my nose with one hand and pushed the glass between my lips with his other hand. Obeying this blunt and callous guy, I dreadfully gulped the H2O down. He removed the glass and allowed me to breathe a few seconds after and I waited. Nothing. There were no hiccups to my utter surprise, but what really shocked me was my action of leaning in to hug Thane. Not just me but Thane was surprised by my action as well but instantly returned the gesture. I reveled in his warm embrace, taking advantage of the situation, no matter how strange it may seem. I reluctantly pulled away as I tried not to convey that I was actually quite comfortable in that position. Feeling the awkward aftermath of my sudden affection dawning on us as my cheeks flamed, as red, I grabbed the glass off the coffee table and quickly drank, which turned out to be a bad idea because Thane's cheeky grin made me laugh and water went flying all over his t-shirt. Maybe it wasn't a bad idea after all. I think that's enough water for one night, Thane said, chuckling as he added to my embarrassment. For the remainder of the night we talked about anything and everything. Present, today held an electrically anxious feel to it, but somewhere inside me, I felt as if things were about to change for the worse. I just couldn't shake the nagging ominous feeling I had. Realizing that Thane brought me from the couch to the bed after I fell asleep, instantly put a small smile on my face. Of course I didn't like him, but he was too much of a gentleman for me not to like, or at least he acts like one. Too excited to waste a second, I hurriedly got dressed and zoomed down the flights of stairs as I made my way directly to the kitchen, which was empty. I looked for Bailey everywhere as I wanted to apologize to her, but she was nowhere in sight. Deciding to just find Thane, I looked around for his office until I finally stumbled upon it. I knocked and, being unmannerly, entered without waiting for an answer, which was a mistake because in Thane's office were about 5 other men sitting before Thane, listening to his every word. He must pay his employees pretty good for them to be so attentive. Sorry, I timidly mumbled as I walked out and was about to close the door. Emery, Thane called me back. Meeting dismissed, boys, he announced to the group of men before turning his full attention to me. I felt like a tiny little ant between the skyscraper men as they walked around me towards the door. Thane was already on his feet, approaching me as the last guy, who I recognized as Bailey's boyfriend, Lucas, had a knowing grin on his face as he looked at me before closing the door behind him. Time to tell me everything, I said excitedly to Thane, who had a grim expression. Do I have to? He solemnly asked. I gave him an oblivious look as to say, duh, as he groaned in agony. Come on, you promised you will tell me everything today. He looked at me for a few moments before he silently took my hand and led me outside. Somehow things always end up badly when we leave the sanction of his house, and I only prayed I will finally receive my answers. Instead of leaving through the front, Thane led me down the corridor towards the back door, where we ended up in his magnificent backyard. My mother planted these flowers, he began as he motioned his hand over to the various flowers. She always wanted to become a botanist, so my father purchased all her favorite flowers and more, just to put a smile on her face the day he told her his secret. So you Blackwood men run on secrets? I jokingly asked. He laughed it off as he continued and sat down on one of the benches. He knew that with time my mother would love him, but he also knew that what he had to tell her would crush her. Thane, as lovely as your parents' stories sound, I don't really see what it has to do with us, I clarified. Us? He smiled cheekily. I lightly slapped his arm. You know what I mean. I do. But in order for you to truly understand and appreciate what my secret is, I feel the need to tell you everything. Everything about me and my past. He said earnestly. Okay, but I make no promises to not interrupt you. I grinned. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. All right, just promise me something. I was thrown off, but said, that depends on what island. Promise me you will listen to my whole story. Promise me that you wouldn't hate me, and promise me that you wouldn't leave. He grabbed my hand in his, and begged me with a look of fright in his eyes. I was at a loss for words. I audibly gulped. I will try, I said, not wanting to break any promises. He looked a bit disappointed at my answer, but offered a gentle smile as he went on. You see, my father and I both have the same secret, and so did my grandfather and great-grandfather and all the greats before him. So it's a family thing that was passed on to you? I asked. He nodded his head. Yeah, at island. He looked a bit wary and unprepared before he continued. Where should I start from? The beginning, and no, not when we met, but before that. To the start of this entire ritual, I said, determined. He stared deep within my eyes as he unfolded the history of the ritual. It started centuries ago. How many ever great-grandfather and his small pack occupied this land in your town of Fairbairn. Wait, your ancestors owned all this land and Fairbairn? I asked, astonished as I cut him off. Yes, my family did, once upon a time. Now, if I can get back to the story? I nodded my head ferociously to hear the story. Well, about a decade after, my grandfather occupied the land which was supposed to be for expanding his pack. The humans invaded Fairbairn. I raised my hand timidly as a gesture to ask a question, and Thane smiled, but I could tell it didn't reach his eyes. Why do you term everyone else but your pack as humans? I quizzically asked. Well, if you listen and stop interrupting, maybe you'll know, he said pointedly but jokingly. Fine, I mumbled dejectedly at him. With one last chuckle his expression turned sober and he went on. So when the humans demanded our land, my grandfather decided to scare them off. Little did he know, however, that among those humans were hunters who just so happened to dedicate their lives to finding and eradicating the last of my kind. Knox, my many great-grandfather, obviously didn't like the idea of his enemies on his land, so his pack agreed to a full-out war against the humans. My mind was reeling with questions, but I dare not say a word because Thane was on a roll and I needed him to continue explaining. What Knox didn't realize would happen that day was finding himself falling in love. At his time it was uncommon for us to have human mates, but it was a truly rare thing for alphas to have human mates. Knox couldn't remember our pack, the Blood Moon pack, ever having a human Luna, but the moon goddess worked her abilities in magical ways, so Knox knew he wasn't going crazy. Moon goddess? I blurted out, understanding my confusion. Thane answered without hesitation. Just as you have your form of a god, my kind worship our goddess, who is called the moon goddess. Trying to comprehend the crap coming from this guy as I motioned for him to continue. So the night that Knox was going to the humans to declare a war, he saw the most gorgeous woman he had ever set his eyes upon, Ida, his mate. Knox knew right at that moment that Ida was his mate and he sought her out. Knox had a different way as compared to me in telling his mate what he was. Except you haven't told me yet, I pointed out. True, but he practically dragged her into the woods and showed her who he was. The only difference is that you didn't drag me into the woods, but you basically dragged me to your crazy town. I explained, exasperated. Guilty, he chuckled. Well, I see your point, but his approach was more direct. I rolled my eyes at him and he just smirked and continued. Right, where was I? So Ida had an irrefutable hate towards Knox. She almost rejected the poor man, but with little convincing she felt the attraction and attachment she had for Knox. Thane gave me a sideways glance trying to suggest something, so they secretly met each other in Fairbairn until Ida's father found them one day. Her father, who just so happened to be the lead hunter. Sort of a Romeo and Juliet story they had, I guess. Knox, however, ran off with Ida as they physically couldn't be taken apart. Knox brought her to this town where he decided he will allow the humans to retain Fairbairn since some of them were Ida's family. For the next year they both lived with the pack. Ida became pregnant in the short time and had her baby boy. Within a month of Knox and Ida's childbirth, Ida's father and his team of hunters found our village. Knox led his pack far away from the house, where Ida and her child were to stay protected, as the rest went to fight Ida's father. Through the mate bond they had, Ida could have physically and mentally feel Knox's pain and couldn't bear it anymore, so she left her baby in the care of the beta's wife and speed off towards Knox. Even as a frail human, Ida knew she had to protect her pack as the Luna, and as a mother. When she arrived at the battleground, it was like a red veil covered the dirt. There was blood everywhere and dead bodies, both human and my kind, that was scattered around the field. Ida raced towards where her father and Knox were at as she dogged the other fighters. Knox saw Ida coming from a mile away, and as her father unknowingly fired a bullet, Knox's wolf jumped in front of her body. I could feel my heart racing as I yearned to hear more. I could somehow feel the pain of Thane's ancestors, as if the scene was happening right before my eyes. Everything went still as Ida slowly saw Knox's body fall to the ground. With a deadly pain she dropped to the floor next to his body as he shifted back to his human form. She could have felt his pain shoot through her again and again like a never-ending song stuck on repeat. Then, as if the moon goddess was looking upon Ida, she suddenly did something neither herself nor anyone knew she could do. She manipulated the elements. Pack members of that day described it as the wind furiously whipping around Ida and Knox while the grass wrapped around Knox's torso where he got shot. Ida placed her hands on Knox's body, and somehow absorbed his pain and healed him. It was described as an absolute miracle that no one saw coming. Ida was then the one lying on the floor as Knox's pain was too unbearable for her to cope with. Knox wasn't sure what just happened or how he was still alive, but Ida's body next to his woke up all his senses immediately. Ida had one last request for Knox as she felt her body deteriorating. Ida didn't want to ever see what happened that day to happen again. She refused to see misjudgment and violence destroy two groups of people she loved dearly. So lying on the forest floor, Ida declared that to overcome their differences and finally live in peace, the next Luna of the Blood Moon Pack was to be human. A human of the Fairbairn town, who her son was to find exactly 20 years after that day and become the Luna. On the first lunar eclipse of that year, her son was to be permitted into Fairbairn to find his Luna. However, she wanted us to live separately, no humans in this territory and none of my kind in Fairbairn, as she knew they couldn't live in peace just yet. Not knowing what to do, Knox agreed to what Ida had said, and with her last breath she whispered, "Take care of our son and remind him that I love him." With that, Ida died in Knox's arms, and Ida's father was enraged. Not caring for what his daughter would have wanted, he shot Knox straight to his heart without warning, as he thought Knox killed his daughter. So both lovers lay on the forest floor in each other's arms as the pack killed Ida's father and the remaining hunters. My heart hurt for Ida and Knox because somehow I felt as if I had a close connectivity with Ida. My heart went out to hers as I learned her story. Thane saw my grief expression and put his arm around me in a comforting gesture, and it was until then that I realized how close I had gotten to him on the bench. With both feet tucked under me and Thane's arm around me, I somehow felt safe. What happened after? I managed out. He seemed a little distracted by what I said, and he was finally brought back to his senses. Oh, right. After they killed the hunters, the beta returned to Fairbairn to inform one the humans who was a leader, of what took place and Ida's last request. So with a mutual agreement they both decided that the humans will occupy Fairbairn and never wander into the forest that leads to our town. No humans were to know the way into the forest, and no one from my town was to set foot into Fairbairn. The beta and his wife then raised Ida's and Knox's son while running and extending the pack. After 20 years had passed and their son, Isaac, took alpha position, and the beta finally decided to inform him of his mother's last wishes. Without hesitation, Isaac agreed to follow through with his deceased mother's request and ventured into Fairbairn on the first total lunar eclipse of that year. Your ancestors created the ritual and Isaac went into Fairbairn on the first ritual? I gulped as I shrugged Thane's arm off my shoulder and moved away from him on the bench. Emery, Thane reached out for me, but I cut him off as I rose to my feet. No, continue your story. He nodded and went on. By some miracle Isaac found his mate who was human, that night in Fairbairn. The pack thought that maybe the moon goddess granted Ida's request for her son. But 20 years after, that same thing happened. The new alpha found his human mate in Fairbairn. So from then on, the pack, and some the humans, came up with the ritual, to the beast, where every 20 years the alpha of the Blood Moon Pack was to venture into Fairbairn and find his mate. The elders of your town ensured that our kind were to be kept a secret and that they were to carry out the ritual how they wanted to on their side of things. That's how they came up with the chaining in the forest and the white dresses. They wanted my kind to be in and out of their town quickly and without disruptions. So the alpha has one location to go find his mate, and she would be one of the few dressed in white. Honestly, it's a little bizarre for my liking, but it's tradition set by the humans. He concluded. I looked into his eyes as I just processed what he told me. Alpha, packs, territory, ancient relatives. This was all the history of the ritual to the beast. Your family is the cause of this entire thing? I asked before I started with my pressing interrogation. He nodded and got up from his seat. But that doesn't make sense. Follow me, was all he had to say before he started walking towards the forest. I didn't know if I should be running in the opposite direction or follow him to see the final piece of the puzzle, but I needed to know. Because it wasn't possible, it was a beast that night, but somehow Thane's family was a part of it. I intertwined my shaking palms together as I said my prayers and followed my doom. Where are you taking me? I asked. To show you what I am. To tell you my secret. Which is. I asked even though I could probably guess. You'll see. Just don't hate me, he said, looking back at me with plea-full eyes. After walking a short distance, we were surrounded by trees and completely alone. Then without warning, Thane started to strip. Full on removing his clothes piece by piece. Thane, what the hell are you doing? I shouted to him, afraid someone will find us and get the wrong impression. He just gave me a cheeky grin and continued on with his weird actions. When he removed his shirt, I couldn't help but drool a little over his 8-pack abs. I was sure he's been putting in hours at the gym. However, when he started removing his pants, I looked down at the moss-covered floor, letting my hair cascade over my face to cover the red tint of my cheeks. Emery, for you to truly understand what I am, you need to look at me, he called over. I hesitantly obliged and lifted my head up while I averted my eyes to focus on his while trying not to look anywhere to the south region of his body. Show me, I said after he waited for me to be ready, and as if in slow motion, I heard the sound of bones cracking as Thane bent on all 4 of his limbs. His hands and feet changed into the shape of legs of an animal while pitch-black fur sprouted from his skin and dagger-like claws came through his nails on his now animal-like feet. This head transformed into a skull shape of a wolf as his entire human features reshaped into that of a wolf. He had wolf ears, a snout and round crimson blood-red eyes which I instantly recognized. Thane was the beast. I wanted to scream and cry. I wasn't sure which emotion was stronger at the moment. Terrified was definitely my main emotion as I thought about it. My soul was internally screaming and pushing me to run, but my physical body just stood there in one spot without showing an ounce of emotion. I looked at it, him, unsure what to do. Should I yell at him? Should I run away like the scared little girl I felt like I was on the inside? I felt exposed and vulnerable as if he was to rip my throat out, but I knew better. Thane would never hurt me, oh so he claimed. But how does one feel seeing their greatest fear in front of them, staring directly into their eyes? A single tear escaped my eye unconsciously, yet I didn't know why. It may be because I raised my expectations of Thane. I wanted him to be a normal guy with a reasonable explanation for this whole messed up scenario. Yet here I am with him in front of me without him being actually in front of me. The animal and the man that stood before me had me questioning life and existence. Was anything not real? Were all the fairy tales true? Most importantly, did I still feel the same way about Thane knowing the truth? He approached me slowly as if gauging my reaction before he scared me off. Somehow knowing who the beast actually is behind all the fur and scary eyes didn't have me as scared as I should have been. But what was this monstrous creature before me? He was too big to be a dog or a wolf. He was the size of a lion. No, he was definitely larger. I was still a bit shaken up though, frozen on the spot, but as he came closer my brain suddenly connected to the realistic part of me and moved a step back. The beast's facial expression resembled that of regret. He went down onto his tummy and lay there bowing his head to me. I assumed it was a sign of him not going to hurt me as he whimpered. This creature had me under some sort of spell because the next thing I knew I walked to him and sat on the dirt. I reached out my hand carefully, afraid that he will snap my hand right off. But he shook his head in a nod for me to proceed and I placed my hand on his head. His fur was amazingly soft, and I couldn't help but be amazed at my current situation. How has the days changed into something I never expected to be a part of? The most creative part of me couldn't even have fathomed this. How was this even possible? Thane lifted his head and moved my hand away with his head and then licked my hand with his tongue. You're really gross, you know that, I said, wiping off his germs on his fur. Thane rose from his position on the ground as I got up and he trudged back to his clothes. In a matter of seconds, he shifted back into his human form, leaving me speechless once again at this magnificent and unexplainable creature. His presence defied all laws of science and what everyone knew about our existence. I had no clue on where to begin figuring him out. When he finished pulled on his clothing, he turned to face me, a bit apprehensive. He looked a bit terrified as if I was going to run for the hills and full out reject him. Instead, I asked, "What are you?" I stared at him, waiting for a response as he fidgeted. He began. But I snapped. My mind woke up from its trance-like state and I felt the fright clawing at my insides. The beast. I yelled at him. How dare you? You sick, evil, maniacal creature like you. You shouldn't even exist. You're a spawn of the devil and I swear to God I will rid you from this earth. I screamed some biblical words at him. If I had holy water, he would probably be drenched in it by now. Before I knew it, Thane pushed me up against the nearest tree, and held his face so close to mine I could feel his breath as it fanned across my cheek. I'm not a goddamn beast. He growled every word lowly. And I definitely wasn't placed here by the devil. He snapped close to my ear. I was intimidated by his presence and pressed further into the tree. I'm sure you have no realistic excuse for shifting into an animal. I spat at him. That animal you just saw was me and I couldn't be prouder of my true self, sweetheart. He announced proudly, do you want to know what I really am? He whispered in a sinister tone in my ear. Even though curiosity nipped at me to listen to him, I felt as though I couldn't hear a single word he was saying. I felt as if I was a caged animal as it struck me that Thane, my biggest nightmare, stood directly in front of me. I could feel my heartbeat quickening, and my blood rushing to my brain making me dizzy. My hands shook and my breathing became labored. Was it time to face the truth of Thane's mystery? Get away from me. I panted out before my brain cells could have interpreted what I was saying. It suddenly felt as if it was no longer a kidnapped case, but rather I was living a horrifying nightmare version of Beauty and the Beast. Except I was no beauty and he was more animalistic than the beast himself. Emery, you saw what I am. Don't you want an explanation? Don't you have questions? He desperately asked me. Realizing that he was standing directly in front of me, I quickly pushed at his chest and angrily rasped out, what do you want me to say? Do you honestly expect me to just smile and accept the fact that my biggest nightmare is standing in front of me and telling me that everything is going to be okay? What more of an explanation can you have after the show you just displayed there? I honestly think that summed it up pretty well. So you know what I truly am? He questioned as he watched me intently and expectantly. There's nothing true about you, you're nothing more than a beast. I calmly said, looking him directly in his hooded eyes. He looked me with a deep anger. This is who I am, and if you can't accept that, then what are waiting for? Reject me, he growled as the windows to his soul stirred up a storm. At that point I couldn't deny that when he said the word reject I felt a strange pain pulling at my heartstrings. I wanted to fall apart at my situation, but I did enough of that to last a lifetime. Before I could comprehend this peculiar feeling in me, Thane suddenly and without warning transformed into the beast and ran off, leaving me to my solitude in the woods as shreds of his clothing fell around me. In a matter of seconds, his heavy footsteps faded away and a piercing howl rung through the air. I didn't know what to do. How to wrap my head around what just happened. How to accept the fact of Thane being the beast. I felt as though the world was crumbling under my feet, and with shaky steps I leaned against the tree behind me and my body fell at its trunk, bringing me to the ground in a pile of confusion and utter insanity. I tried going back to that night. The night I first met Thane. From the moment we met in the woods on that horrific night I knew there was something that attracted me to Thane, but then again I knew that there was something odd about him. First off, all the fact that I never saw him before raised suspicion, and I should have screamed stranger danger, because no one beside hunters of the beast went into the forest. Plus the fact that he was just wandering around in the woods alone at night brought me chills. There was no doubt in my mind now that he was snooping around to find his victim. The undeniable pull between us was something, but now I knew why. I was the one he had planned to take all along. That's why he said he will see me soon. After the ritual I kept waiting for the beast to turn up at any second, kind of living with paranoia that this enormous furry animal would pop out of the woods and then chew my head off. I also had an inkling of a feeling that Thane was somehow my knight in shining armor, the mysterious guy that just so happened to be my undercover protector who would have kept me safe. Instead, my knight died when he shifted into that creature. Now he was more like my sworn enemy. To think I've constantly been with the beast for the last 3 days baffled me. He was right in front of me this entire time. Maybe I should have let Jake chip me with his tracking device. No. I shook that thought out of my head as soon as I thought of it. He was most definitely more evil than the beast or Thane. I stared in front of me at the open field where there were now strips of clothing left behind from Thane. I tried wrapping my head around what he was, what he is, but my brain felt as if it was on overdrive. The initial shock of what I saw no more than a half hour ago hadn't worn off, and I felt like screaming. How was it possible? Most importantly, how is it possible for me to still feel a pull towards him? Even though I have only known him for 3 days, I feel as if I've known him all my life, and that scared me more than anything. As I looked to the sky and contemplated my situation, it struck me that I wasn't afraid of Thane, I was afraid of who he was. The furry animal he evolved into scared the crap out of me, and not knowing its capabilities had me shaken. But then I guess everyone was terrified of the inevitable. I knew the human side of Thane was caring, protective, and maybe a tad jealous at times, but did I know the beast? Does Thane completely vanish when he transforms, or does he regain control? Would he be more primal or retain his human aspects? Maybe I should have given him a chance to explain everything. Maybe I should strongly consider staying out here in the wilderness and either dying from hypothermia during the night or getting torn apart by a bear. Both options still had the possibility of death, because I had no idea what was going to happen if I approached Thane. He seemed furious when he stormed off as the beast, and I wasn't sure if I was ready. But if not now, then when? It wasn't like I knew how to return home on my own anyways. Plus there was the fact that there was a ring sitting on my right hand as a constant reminder that I was Thane's future bride. In a sick, twisted way I felt proud of having the honor of wearing this ring, but I had no idea of the repercussions for feeling that way. Could I still accept my fate after learning of Thane? Could I accept becoming his wife? Would I turn like him? For Christ's sakes, I was only 19. Thane was 19 as well, and I had no idea how he could accept his fate of just marrying a complete stranger. Maybe there's a way out of this. Maybe if I tell him I hate him, or tell him I can never accept him, he will let me go. After all, yesterday he was dead set on me hating him after today. But I need answers before I do that. Time to face the no longer playful, gentle Thane, but rather the harsh one I hadn't had the chance of encountering before. Now I'm going to have to be the bigger person and approach Thane, because he seemed to be done with my stubbornness and getting me to listen. I guess I should work on my timeliness for not listening. So with a warrior-like spirit and courage shooting through my veins, I got off the ground with a sudden adrenaline and marched my way back to Thane's house. Luckily, he knew my lack of coordination, so we didn't trail far off into the woods. Spotting the house, I stopped and inhaled and exhaled as I tried to get rid of most of my anxiety. It's now or never, do or most likely die. As I approached the front door, I clearly and loudly heard Thane's booming voice, angered, tensed and livid. He was shouting orders to God knows which poor soul. And it's my entire fault. With my heart beating rapidly, my head spinning, and my hands shaking, I timidly and cautiously opened the door. Bailey was standing just on the other side of the door, and as I entered she turned and gave me a pitiful look as if she knew my situation. In his office, she mouthed and pointed the way as she silently told me where he was. "Thank you," I silently answered. As I stood outside his door, I hear him growling and shouting, "How could you have let this happen? Ensure the perimeter is secured at all times, and never let this happen again." I wondered what he was going on about, but knowing I wouldn't figure it out, I gently knocked on his door. The other side of the door went dead silent, and I knew he heard me. Suddenly the door flew open and a distressed Lucas and another guy I presumed was Bo, Thane's trainer and best fight, walked out, eyeing me cautiously with some relief. When they were gone, I looked up into the office and saw him staring lost at me. He had an enraged, indignant, sullen look. Boy, was he pissed. As his eyes fell on me, it visibly softened but held a distressed, tormented melancholy look, and he seemed distant. Trying to find my voice, I opened my mouth but no words came out. I cleared my throat and tried again. "See, can I come in?" I softly said. Not knowing how in the world he heard me, He gestured with his head for me to enter. With shaky steps I walked in and shut the door. "Lock it," he tensely said from behind me. Unwillingly following his instructions, I locked the door, turned around and approached his desk. I looked at him, waiting for him to speak, but he remained silent in his seat. He waited expectantly for me to say something, but I couldn't get the words out of my mouth. "What can I do for you, Emery?" he roughly asked. "I want an explanation. I want to hear you out," I slowly answered as my gaze shifted away from him. He got up from his office chair and walked towards me. I couldn't help but take a step back, and the hurt in his eyes was visible. "Come," he ordered as he led me to the leather sofa in the corner of his office. Hesitantly, I took a seat next to him and looked him in the eye as I listed my questions in my brain. "Well, what do you want to know?" he impatiently asked. "Or do you just want to know how to properly reject me?" I looked at him confusedly. "Reject you?" I asked, bewildered. His stare hardened and turned cold. "So do you want to reject me?" he asked icily. "What? No. No." I rushed out. "That's not what I want to do. I don't even know what you mean by rejecting you," I hurriedly answered. "You aren't rejecting me." Confusion and relief both flooded his expression. "No, I'm not." I shake my head, and suddenly, the aching feeling inside of me disappeared. He seemed as if he couldn't even process what was happening and in turn remained silent. "I'm ready, Thane. I want the truth. The whole truth, and don't sugarcoat it. I need to know that what I just saw out there wasn't a figment of my imagination," I said earnestly. "What do you want to know, Emery?" he asked cautiously. "You said you were the alpha," I pointed out. "Yeah, as I told you, I am the leader of the pack," he said, unsure of where I was going with this. "What is the pack, Thane?" I asked quietly. He hesitated. "The pack is my friends and family. They are all what I just showed you outside. None of them would hurt you, however." "How do you know that for sure?" I raised my eyebrows in question. "Because you're their Luna and they would never dare to hurt you," he said with conviction. "What's a Luna?" "The person who serves beside the alpha, the other leader of the pack and my equal," he said with pride. I tried to wrap my head around everything that he was saying, but I knew to fully understand the logistics and beast lingo, I had to know what he was. "What are you?" I finally managed to ask as I looked him into his eyes. He was taken aback from the question, but surprise didn't cross his face as he knew the question was bound to come up. He rose from the couch and stood his ground as he cleared his throat. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you," he uttered. "Don't give me that crap, Thane. I just saw you shift into that animal, so try me," I said, exasperated. "Point taken," he said, prolonging my wait. "Just tell me," I shouted impatiently. "I'm a werewolf," he whispered, but I'm sure I heard him correctly. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry or scream. I may even be going insane. A werewolf? I sure didn't see that one coming. I started laughing uncontrollably until I couldn't catch my wits. "No, just no." I giggled at his response. I felt like I couldn't breathe at Thane's oddity of a joke. "No?" he asked, incredulous. "Emery, I'm telling you the truth. I swear to the moon goddess," he said, unsmiling with a solemn look. "Stoop," I said, clutching my stomach in a fit of giggles. He walked towards me in one long stride and grasped my face with a grim look. "Do I look like I'm joking with you?" His expression sobered me up, but out of all the things I learnt and saw today, this was by far the most ridiculous thing I heard, but maybe not the most impossible. "You aren't funny, Thane. If you were a comedian you would have sucked," I clarified. "Emery, I've told you my history and shown you what I am. How could you not believe me?" he asked, exasperated. I looked at him as if he grew two heads. "Thane, you just said you're a werewolf, so excuse me if I live in the reality side of the world. Tell me one thing," he asked, releasing my face. I rolled my eyes at him. "What? Tell me what you think a werewolf is." He looked at with a poker face. With a skeptical look I retaliated with my little knowledge on the supernatural. "Well, From the 0 werewolf books I've read, a werewolf is like a hybrid human-wolf, animalistic thing. Animalistic thing? He questioned, amused. Yeah, like isn't it a human who shifts into a... And I stopped mid-sentence as a lightning struck me. Go on, continue. He nudged. How? How? He asked, bewildered. How is it possible? That means you finally believe me. Don't get ahead of yourself. Just tell me if you're real. He lifted my hand gently and placed it on his chest. I'm as real as I can get, Emery. I showed you what I am, a werewolf. My hand began to shake in his grasp, and I felt like my entire world was falling apart. All that I ever thought were fairy tales in this world was all a lie. Emery, are you okay? Thane asked when I hadn't said a word. But I suddenly felt anxious. My hand shook uncontrollably and I felt the air being sucked out of my lungs. I was having a panic attack. I fell to the ground on my knees as Thane followed me to the floor. Sweetheart, you need to breathe. Thane looked absolutely terrified, but I didn't have it in me to speak. Baby, look at me and focus on my voice, breath. In and out, deep breaths. Relax, I'm right here. He tried calming me down as he pulled me to him on his lap. Breathe. Listen to my voice, slowly breathe in and out, in and out. I vaguely heard him. His scent brought a sense of harmony to me, and feeling his heartbeat through his shirt worked. His scent calmed me down and I took a much-needed long breath in and calmed my racing heart. Suddenly, the door swung open, breaking the lock, and Dr. Adler from the infirmary walked in. Alpha, Luna. He greeted us as he rushed to our sides. Adler, she started to shake when I told her what we are. She couldn't breathe, her face went pale and she fell to the floor. Thane recapped by symptoms. Adler checked my heart rate, blood pressure, and pulse before he drew blood from my finger to test my blood sugar. Her blood pressure is quite high, but I think it was the initial shock of finding out what you are that gave her a panic attack. With a good rest she should be just fine. Adler offered me a gentle smile and left, but not before saying, don't stress her out too much, Alpha. With a sigh of relief, Thane pulled me into his arms and buried his face in the crook of my neck. Oh, thank the moon goddess, you're all right. I wrapped my arms around Thane and sniffed in his woodsy scent, which instantly calmed me down. The effect this guy had on me is unnerving. Come on, I think that's enough for today. Thane said as he pulled me up and swooped me off my feet as he carried me out the door bridal style. No, I need to hear more. I argued, but he gave me a serious look. I said that's enough for today, he said in a final tone. As we began walking up the stairs, the silence was discomforting. You know I can walk, right? And I can allow you to, but my wolf needs you right now after what just happened, he replied. Your wolf? I questioned. He looked me in my eyes, and I can still feel the fright I held just moments ago in his office. I will tell you, but right now, sweetheart, I need you to be safe and to rest. I stayed quiet after that as I had an overwhelming sense of belonging right there in his arms, and I didn't know what to say to him. Thane walked to his room and placed me on his bed with a lingering kiss on my forehead. It sent electricity shocks through my body. Rest, Thane whispered in my ear. I'll be right outside, he said before he left. I did something unlike me. Wait, Thane, I called back. He turned back to me on high alert. Is everything all right? Stay. Don't leave me alone, please. I asked the question I thought I never would as I moved around in the bed and left a place for him. Emery, you need to rest right now, he argued. No, what I need right now is to not be alone. Please, Thane, I pleaded. His eyes softened and without another word he strode over to the bed and laid down facing me. We just laid there, staring each other in the eyes as we looked beyond each other's souls into our innermost self, looking and searching for answers to help us cope with what we were feeling. This attraction I had to Thane was indescribable, but so real that I wondered if I could do this. Could I actually be with him? Be with a werewolf? At that moment I knew two things. I couldn't leave Thane, and I missed my family immensely. As if reading my mind, Thane asked, "Tell me about your family." It was both a great distraction and something I can enjoy talking about. There are my parents and I have a little sister named Avery. We've lived in Fairbairn forever. Dad actually met my mom there when he was on an exploration trip and he fell in love with her. After that they got married, bought a house, and had me and Avery. Avery, she's 15, a bit bummed out that she couldn't take part in the ritual. Quite frankly, my sister and you might actually get along quite well. She loves the outdoors and she always believed the beast was much more than the stories. If she only had the chance to meet you. I smiled, remembering my little sister's obsession with the ritual and all things supernatural. Seems like the wrong sister was chosen. Thane chuckled. You miss them, don't you? He asked, brushing a stray wisp of my hair out of my face. Yes, they were my everything and we all stuck together after Avery was diagnosed. I whispered as my heart ached not being able to be by my sister's side while she was struggling. Thane placed his hand on my shoulder in a comforting gesture as if he could have felt my pain. Diagnosed with what? He quietly asked. When she turned 14, she was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy. As I talked about my baby sister, I felt a lump in throat and my eyes started to prickle with tears. Shh, I'm sure everything's going to be fine. I know it, Emery. Your sister is going to live and grow to be a beautiful young woman who is going to find her human mate one day, he said sincerely, looking into my eyes. Her surgery was supposed to be done in a few months. My parents and I worked every day around the clock to help save up for her surgery. I just hope she knows I'm with her and I hope my parents are able to fund her surgery. Is that why you wanted to go back? He asked. Mostly. I made it my obligation to help my sister until her last breath. I'm sorry, Emery, but you can't go back. Who knows what will happen to my pack or you if the humans ever found us? He said with remorse. I gave him a sad but understanding smile as I placed my hand in his. I know. I understand now, Thane. I assured him. And I appreciate you framing this. I said, grabbing the picture frame with my family's picture that I brought with me. He gave me a shy smile. I thought you'd appreciate it, but you didn't need to hide it. It's your people who said you weren't allowed to have any memorabilia on you for the ritual. My pack only requested for electronics to be banned. Thank you though. I feel as if I have them watching over me. Fond memories with my family filled my mind, and it couldn't help but bring a smile on my face. Can I ask you something? He suddenly asked. Yeah? Is it because of your sister's condition that you chose to become a doctor? He asked with interest. Yes, after she was diagnosed I made an oath to her that I will help her. I know it's very far-fetched, but I felt as if I could somehow be a part of helping her. I could save her, because there isn't a cure for what she has. But maybe I could have changed that. I could tell you'll be a great Luna. Your passion and selflessness doesn't cease to amaze me, Emery, Thane said proudly. I blushed as his compliment, but I had no idea what the role entailed. Have you ever gotten a panic attack before? He asked with concern etched on his face. Suddenly I was back in the hospital, remembering all the sleepless nights and the anxious waiting. Yeah, every time my sister was in the hospital and the wait became too long, I got panic attacks. It started the first night Avery was rushed into the hospital, because she was extremely weak. I was so worried and my mind kept thinking about the worst case scenario and my lungs would feel as it was suddenly on fire and I felt suffocated. In a matter of a heartbeat I was wrapped in Thane's arms, and as much as I wanted to fight him, I didn't have in me, and I didn't want to leave his warm embrace. It was like a safety blanket protecting me from the world. But I had one thing stuck in my mind, wondering who would protect me from him. I never want that to happen to you again. Emery, never. I promise you I will ensure nothing ever happens to you. Just please don't scare me like that again. He placed another kiss on my forehead and suddenly it was my new favorite thing. You know, I said, looking up at his face, no one has ever calmed me down so fast before. Normally it took my parents forever to get me to breath or even concentrate on them. He looked like he won the lottery with that one. Didn't I tell you we're soulmates? No, I never heard you said that. I teased. We fell into a comfortable silence, and just laying there in Thane's arms never felt more peaceful. Honestly, I never thought I would be in this position with him after how we met and the whole kidnapping thing. Which reminded me. Thane? I asked to ensure he was still awake. Yes, sweet cheeks. He answered. Since when did I give you permission to call me that? I asked instead. Since I just said it. He replied egotistically. Okay, sugar bear. I grinned evilly. His eyes almost popped out of his head. No way. No, take it back. Take sweet cheeks back, I countered. He begrudgingly agreed to our compromise. Okay, but I'm keeping sweetheart. He said in a serious tone. I rolled my eyes at him but continued. Right, so what I was about to ask, if I can ask some follow-up questions. He looked a bit anxious but pulled us both up so we were sitting against the headboard, and I unwillingly pulled out of his arms. Ask away. He said. Okay, so are you all, werewolves? I felt silly saying that word, but he did show me what he was, so how can I still deny it? Maybe I was trapped in some vivid dream that went on and on forever. He gave me a little smile. Yes, my pack and I are all werewolves, except my mother. He answered. Right, your mom was the last girl taken in the ritual, I said with realization. Yeah, so if you ever need someone to talk to, just ask her. She went through the same thing as you. Emery, she would understand better than anyone else. He expressed. I'm not sure she would want to talk to me after the last time I spoke to her. I was ashamed of my actions and wished I had the chance to apologize to her and tell her how sorry I was. Don't worry, she's a forgiving person. He grinned. So much I highly anticipate that you're already forgiven. Thank you. Maybe if you could ask her if I can talk to her sometime soon? I asked. She would love that. He answered. Okay, so next question. Would I ever become like you? He looked confused. A werewolf? Yeah, would I ever turn into a wolf? Oh God, no. I just have to ask. He chuckled at my response. Firstly, it's not bad being a werewolf. It's powerful. And secondly, you don't have a thing to worry about. You will remain a human. Okay, great, I guess. So you told me that you brought me here because I'm your mate. That we are supposed to get married? I asked for clarification. Well, when werewolves are born, the moon goddess pairs us with a mate, our soul mate. You already know that story of why I have a human mate. So, when we find each other, the attraction will be so powerful that we will connect on a spiritual level, both our minds and body. Part of that process is going through a sort of wedding type ritual, he said. Oh, please, not another ritual. I sighed. Don't worry, you wouldn't be chained, and the white dress you wear would be to symbolize our bond. He smiled. Why exactly do you need a mate? I asked. Because as I told you before, I'm the alpha of the pack, and in order to run this pack I need a Luna. The woman who would run the pack by my side as my equal and the mother of the pack. Without you, Emery, this pack and I wouldn't be able to function. I would feel as if I was missing a huge part of my life, and I wouldn't have the correct mindset to handle the pack and be the leader they need. So this is our destiny? We're meant to run this pack together? I questioned. Yes, that and one more thing. He trailed off, a bit apprehensive. What thing? I asked suspiciously. Well, you see, the thing is, he laughed awkwardly, you are meant to have my kids. He rushed out. I looked at him confused. I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. He sighed. We're meant to have kids to continue the alpha line. He explained slowly. I almost lost my shit. Excuse me. Did you just say kids? I asked in horror. Yeah, we're expected to have our first child by next year. He shrugged like it no big deal. Are you hearing yourself right now? I asked, exasperated. I'm only 19, for crying out loud. Yeah, and I'm 19 too, but it's what's expected.